everyone. Yes, it is I, the one and only K-Rock, and this is episode 44 of Krocking, Locking, Dropping with the K-Rock, sponsored by nobody. Man, I swear, sponsored since the beginning of time. Yes, this is the 44th episode without a sponsor, and hopefully that changes over time in the near future. But folks, I gotta tell you what, this is going to be a very short episode, a bit of a decent short episode at least, because we got a couple of things that we really need to discuss. So today on this episode, we're going to be talking about the NBA's hottest team, the Cleveland Cavaliers, who made NBA history. And I will be discussing that and whether or not I see them as legitimate NBA title contenders. Now, what do I mean legitimate? Well, big threats to the Eastern Conference, obviously, and the question is, can they maintain that level of success to win the NBA Finals? We'll wait and see how that all pans out. And then there is a change down in Houston. The Astros are making a new change, not necessarily from previous ownership, but we're talking about a new stadium name, and I'm going to give my thoughts on all that and whether or not I approve or disapprove, or maybe need some time to really reconsider my opinions as well. But we're going to be talking about all that as well. So we got a couple of good things to discuss, and folks, cannot wait to get right into it. And you know, folks, then of course we are going to be talking about Week 11 predictions. And folks, I got to tell you what, I am so happy that my Houston Texans actually won against the Dallas Cowboys. They didn't just beat them, they pretty much dominated it, 34-10. Now, I know you're all going to be thinking, dude, why didn't you pick the Texans? Like, if you felt confident, why did you say that the Texans and Cowboys were going to tie? Well, it was really a professional opinion. It was a professional pick. I wanted to keep my undefeated pick. I was worried that if I picked the Texans, they could lose, and if I picked the Cowboys, then the Cowboys would win. Of course, knowing the circumstances now, if I had done that, I would not have picked a tie. So I do kind of regret going with a tie, but you know what, folks? It is what it is. A win's a win, and I am very, very happy. So, yes, indeed. A win for the Texans, back on track. Hopefully, we look to continue onward. So, we're going to be talking about my Week 11 predictions, and we will be getting more into that. Or actually, not Week 11, Week 12. Holy moly, we are moving ahead. So, I got to get myself back on track here with these predictions as well. But Week 12, yes, definitely for Week 12. In the meantime, though, folks, we're going to step aside real fast. When we come back, I will be talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers and whether or not they are legitimate title contenders. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back. It's official, folks, as my colleague, Mark T. Robinson, on our other podcast, Two Pals on a Pod, which, again, I'm not sure what's happening there with all that. We'll figure out some way to get together. In case you listen to my other podcast, Two Pals on a Pod, which, of course, you put it on Buzzsprout and Spotify, almost similar to what we do on this podcast in particular. But as my colleague, Mark T. Robinson, would like to say, it's the most wonderful time of the year as the NBA season has officially gotten underway. And, well, there are some teams that are really standing out in more ways than one. One team that, of course, has dropped out, has kind of been sluggish as of late, the Dallas Mavericks, last year's Western Conference champions. They're kind of been struggling. I mean, it's still early in the season. You can't really say that they're going to be out of the picture as of this moment, but once they kind of figure things out, they'll be okay. But looking at the Western Conference standings, you see that the Golden State Warriors are 10-2, even without Klay Thompson. You got the Oklahoma City Thunder at 11-3, and the Thunder were a very good team last year, expected to be title contenders from the Western Conference. But the big surprise of the Western Conference, the Houston Rockets, they're 10-4, and they've won their last 5 games in a row. So head coach Ime Udoka has gotten his boys off to a great start, but you know, I don't know if they'll be able to maintain that the seeding and position, because eventually I think they're going to slide down. But I do hope that they make the playoffs or the play-in tournament at least, and then go on a little small run. Not saying they'll make the NBA Finals, but eventually over time, if the Rockets can continue to build on that success, then they should be okay. But I want to talk about the Eastern Conference, particularly with one team. And folks, I don't know how else to say this, but Cleveland rocks. All the little kids going up on the skids, going Cleveland rocks, Cleveland rocks. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I know you guys are hearing that song, and I know you love that music. If you were a huge fan of the Drew Carey Show, yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But Cleveland rocks right now. The reason why they rock is because the Cleveland Cavaliers are off to the best start in franchise history, obviously. They have become the fourth team in NBA history to start the season winning their first 15 games. Yes, fourth team. What a remarkable achievement to start 15-0. And I'll tell you what, I don't think anybody expected that. I mean, when you start an NBA season, you don't expect a team to win their first 15 games. But the crazy thing about Cleveland is how they are doing it. Because last year, the Cleveland Cavaliers were 48-34, which was the fourth seed in the Eastern Conference. And this year, they are currently the best offense in the league. They are generating 121.8 points per 100 possessions, which is first place in the league. 7 points more than what they got last year, which earned them 16th in the league. They also are leading the NBA in both field goal percentage at 52.1% and three-point percentage at 41.8%. So that is just unbelievable. I mean, the Cleveland Cavaliers are off to a great start from an offensive perspective. And oh, by the way, they also have one of the top 10 best defenses in all of the NBA. So clearly, the Cleveland Cavaliers are hot as of this moment. And it's kind of crazy. Like, you look at the players that they have on their team, and Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, guys that, you know, are the stars of the franchise. They actually have missed a game throughout this historic run to this point. Caris LeVert and Dean Wade have also been out for a couple of contests as well. And then you have Max Strus, who has yet to appear in a game. He's out with an injury right now, so he's yet to appear in a game. But, man, definitely going to be a much-needed factor for the Cleveland Cavaliers when he comes back. Imagine how good they could be to this stage. Of course, the Cavaliers have also gotten contributions from Ty Jerome, Sam Merrill, and Jordan Ning to lead to this historic start. So, as of this point, the Cleveland Cavaliers are the biggest story in the NBA for their historic start. So, that has led me to wonder just whether or not we could officially say that the Cleveland Cavaliers are officially NBA title contenders. Well, the Cavaliers have a legitimate superstar in Donovan Mitchell, who, even though he didn't play in the last game, is averaging 24.6 points and shooting 42% on three-pointers this season. Of course, Ty Jerome, very capable backup. He finished with 24 points that night, 4 of 7 from the field, or from three-point range, and 8 assists in the game. Then, of course, Darius Garland, another key player, he finished with the game-high 25 points and 12 assists, while Evan Mobley had a double-double of his own of 23 and 11. So, the Cavaliers have some great talent. They have guys that can really continue to, build themselves up, compete for games, and they are making a statement that they believe that they will be Eastern Conference champions this season. However, the next game will be the toughest test for them because they are going up against the defending NBA champion Boston Celtics in a rematch of last season's playoff series where, Boston, they pretty much dominated the Cleveland Cavaliers. They won 4-1. So you look at this upcoming game, and this is really the first big test for the Cavaliers because at some point you know that they're going to lose. And this is probably the first big opportunity for Cleveland to lose their game. Boston, of course, coming off the championship season with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, all guys that won the championship against Dallas in 5 games. And here they are with an opportunity to show the Cleveland Cavaliers that, yeah, you may be the top team in the Eastern Conference as of this moment, but let's remember, we own the Eastern Conference. We are the defending NBA champions, and we're going to show you that why. The Celtics, of course, are 11-3, but you just have to think that this is going to be a game where the Cavaliers want to win to prove that they can win the Eastern Conference and win a championship as of this stage. So, I think this is a must-win game for Cleveland if they want to make a statement. But here's the thing. This is something that I think is so crazy. Because if Cleveland actually wins this game and goes 16-0, that would mean that they would have the second best start in NBA history. That would mean that they passed the 1948-49 Washington Capitals, who started 15-0, and the 1993-94 Houston Rockets, who also started 15-0. So the Cavaliers would be at 16-0, which means that only one team in NBA history has started better than the Cavaliers, and that, of course, was the 2015-2016 Golden State Warriors, who won a remarkable 23 consecutive games in a row. So, yeah, that's basically what Cleveland is facing. But it just seems like a perfect opportunity for the NBA's elite to stop the Cavaliers from this historic streak. So, but I just think that as of this point, the Cavaliers are off to a great start, but you have to think at some point they're going to falter. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to drop down to the 5 or 8 seed by the end of the season. I think that would be very surprised. I think the Cavaliers will finish at least a top 3 team in the Eastern Conference, maybe top 2, depending on how you look at it. But I just think that the start that the Cavaliers have at this stage, you could say, well, they're playing out of their mind, or they're just not, a legitimate title contender. I think they can be a title contender, but this is really a first big step for them. The Cleveland Cavaliers, from a city that, historically speaking, has not been known for winning championships ever since the Jim Brown days with the Cleveland Browns, and they did have one with LeBron James and company. Having a legitimate opportunity to make themselves a title contender. So, the Cleveland Cavaliers has an opportunity to make a statement and to win. So, yeah, that's kind of basically where we stand as far as the Cavaliers. They got a big game against Boston, and it's going to be a real telltale sign for how things are going to be for the Cavaliers for the rest of the season. Now, eventually they will have to pull off a big trade to get the guys they want to help lead them to a championship, and they also are probably going to have to, deal with the best from the Eastern Conference and have to be tested at some point with adversity. So the Cavaliers are a team to watch out for. I would say at this point, Cleveland, even though they're in first place, are probably the third best team, maybe second best team in the Eastern Conference. I still say Boston's the best, even though Boston's got 3 losses already. The New York Knicks, they kind of are struggling at this stage, but I do think that they'll eventually turn it around and maybe get a little run going. Because if you look at the Eastern Conference standings, Cleveland is 15-0, Boston's 11-3. Then you have this piled junk as far as the number 3 through 12 standings are concerned. There's a 4-game separation between the 3-seeded Orlando Magic and the 12th-seeded Milwaukee Bucks, which, Milwaukee, they're definitely going down the drain, especially with Doc Rivers as a head coach. I mean, come on. Why would you fire a guy that got you in first place with a winning record for a guy that has proven to be a playoff choker, and the only reason why he won a championship was because of the great talent that he had with Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and Ray Allen. So why would you have that guy coaching your team? I mean, I'm sorry. I'm sure Doc Rivers is a nice guy if you get to know him, has some great stories to talk about, but when it comes to his legacy, don't have a 3-1 series lead with him as a head coach. Or don't be in position to win a series with him as a head coach, because chances are you're not going to get it. So that's kind of the way I see things to this stage. But back to the Eastern Conference landscape. I think it's the Celtics first. I think the Knicks are the second best team, even though they're off to a very horrible start. But I see Cleveland as like the third best team. So that's just the way I look at it at this stage. Right now, it's kind of the opposite, but don't let there's still a lot of season left to be played. I mean, 15 games, there's still a bulk left. We'll see how the Eastern Conference landscape pans out. But let's talk about something else that has really been on my mind. I took a little bit of some heat from some fans that maybe are kind of calling me crazy or maybe being a little sarcastic with me, because let's talk about the 4 teams that have started 15-0 and what the legacy is going to be. 4 teams, 15-0. And you're not going to believe what I just saw from this. The 1948-1949 Washington Capitals, yes, that was an NBA team back in 1948-49, even though the NHL counterpart, they spell Capitals with a second A, whereas the original Capitals spelled it with a O, so it's Capitols. So yeah, go figure. But the 1948-1949 Washington Capitals were the first team in NBA history, or actually they called it a different league back then. I want to say it was the BAA league at that stage, the Basketball Association of America League. So, yeah. But the Washington Capitals made history with the first time ever that they started 15-0, or a team started 15-0. So that raises the question, how far did they go? Well, back in those days, they played 60 games, and the Washington Capitals finished first place in the Eastern Division, which is what they called it then. They finished with a record of 38-22, and they ended up going all to the playoffs, and they won their first couple of series. They beat the Philadelphia Warriors in 2-game sweep. Then they ended up beating the New York Knicks in a best 2 out of 3, and that set the stage for them meeting the Minneapolis Lakers in the BAA finals, or technically the NBA finals. This was when the Lakers had George Mikan as the first big superstar. Washington unfortunately fell behind 3-0, and even though they were able to force a Game 6, they just couldn't get the job done. Minneapolis won that series in 6 games, so Washington ended up losing the NBA finals. In 1993-94, my beloved Houston Rockets reached the NBA finals after starting 15-0. Had some adversity along the way, but they got there. They took on the New York Knicks with Patrick Ewing and company. Down 3-2, Hakeem Olajuwon blocks a shot from John Starks that saves the season, wins Game 6, and the Rockets end up winning the championship that year. So that was a very happy memory, although I was 3 years old at the time. Then we have the Golden State Warriors, and oh boy. Golden State started 23-0. Best record in the NBA. Best record in NBA history. The only team to this point that have lost fewer than double-digit games in NBA history, 73-9. Had to overcome a little bit of adversity in the conference finals as they were down 3-1 to the Oklahoma City Thunder, but they rallied back and they were able to win the series and go to the NBA Finals, where they took out LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers. And a strange twist of fate, Golden State ended up leading 3-1. And we know what happened afterwards. The Warriors would finish with 3 wins in the NBA Finals as LeBron James won the championship for Cleveland. So, a small sample size, but so far, and this is where I've kind of gotten flack for this, historically speaking, as of now, the odds, they may be even or, but right now they're sort of tilted towards against Cleveland. In that, can the Cleveland Cavaliers not only make it to the NBA Finals, but can they win the championship? Well, that's hard to say because, again, we've yet to see the rest of the schedule play itself out. But I do know this. that if the Cavaliers make it to the NBA Finals, it's a remarkable achievement and a remarkable story. I mean, can you imagine? Like, right now, looking at the NBA situation, I said that the Golden State Warriors were the best team in the Western Conference, or at least they were according to the standings. If the NBA Finals were based on the number one seeds, it would be Golden State and Cleveland again. And can you imagine Cleveland going up 3-1, only for Golden State to reverse the fortunes of 2016 and do what they had done to them? Man, that would be so crazy when you really think about it. So, but as it stands right now, it's hard to really say whether or not, a team is the odds favor a team winning a championship, even though so far in 3 attempts, it's been 2-1 in favor of not winning a championship. Because, for starters, it's hard to go 15-0. It's hard to start 15-0. It's very rare. We've had teams that started 12-0. We've had teams that started 13-0, 14-0. And unfortunately, they end up losing before they can get to that 15th win. It's very hard to start off winning, having a winning streak like that. I mean, look at it this way. The Lakers had a 33-game winning streak. That's the longest winning streak in NBA history. And yet, they didn't start that winning streak until 9 games into the season. You had the Miami Heat with LeBron James in 2013. They started 27. They ended up starting 1-1, but they had that historic 27-game winning streak that started in early February and didn't end until late March. So 27 games. I mean, that is a historic winning streak. You don't think about winning streaks at the start of the season. You think about winning streaks in the moment when they happen. So, yeah, I mean, this is kind of one of those, historical accomplishments. I mean, it's a big deal for Cleveland, and Cleveland fans should really be excited. Now, of course, when they do lose at some point, I'm not, and it depends on when they lose as well, that it's going to be okay, they got the loss, so now we can focus on the season and trying to finish with the best record in the NBA and the Eastern Conference and hopefully go on this incredible playoff run to a championship at this stage. I'll say this, though. If looking at the schedule for the Cavaliers, if they were to beat the Boston Celtics, I mean, you have the New Orleans Pelicans, not a great team. You have the Toronto Raptors, not a great team. You have the Atlanta Hawks twice, in 2 games. If they can start this off 20-0, they could be the second team in NBA history to start a season 20-0. That is, of course, if they can, maintain their poise and not have any letdowns for that stage. But the Cleveland Cavaliers, man, they are off to a great start, and it would not be surprising if they go on a deep playoff run for that matter. Of course, there are going to be a lot of circumstances that need to go right for them. They need to make a big trade. They need to get themselves, at least, overcome some adversity when it comes time for that. And I think we're going to see an Eastern Conference Finals rematch, or a playoff rematch between Boston and Cleveland, but it'll be in the Eastern Conference Finals. Because I think Cleveland will more than likely finish with the second best record in the NBA. And I think they'll either play the New York Knicks, have to get by them in the semifinals, or maybe the Indiana Pacers or the Orlando Magic. Now, the Magic are currently the 3rd team in the Eastern Conference, the 3rd seed. And it's going to be a telltale sign. So that's a lot to take in, but the Cleveland Cavaliers, congratulations on your historic start. We'll see if you can get that 16th win, and we'll see if you can keep this winning streak going and maybe get yourselves to be a legitimate championship threat at that stage. I do think Cleveland is a team to watch out for in the Eastern Conference. So that is all I got to say on that. Anyways, folks, we're going to step aside, but when we come back, we will be talking about a big change that is happening in Houston, and stay tuned. We'll be right back. Now, folks, when you think about historic stadiums, you think about traditional stadium names. You think about Yankee Stadium, Dodger Stadium, Fenway Park, Wrigley Field, Madison Square Garden, and Lambeau Field, just to name a few stadiums for that matter. But recently, you've also started thinking about corporate sponsored stadiums. For instance, you have the Caesar Superdome, Progressive Field, and I can't believe the Lakers actually still changed their name from Staples Center, which I really thought was a great stadium name, and they should have kept it. But I can't believe they changed it from Staples Center to Crypto.com Arena. Yeah, it's just so crazy. But yeah, we're having a lot of corporate sponsored stadium names as well. And well, today the Houston Astros actually announced that they were changing the name of the stadium, and it is officially no longer going to be called Minute Maid Park. And I was very sad to hear that as well, but I was also eager to find out what the name of the new stadium was going to be. Well, I say new stadium, but what the ballpark was going to be renamed as. I'm just thinking it's got to be something really cool, something spectacular and awesome and everything. Just something that could really identify with all Houstonians and everything. Well, today I found out that the name of the ballpark is going to be Daikin Park. Okay, Daikin Park. What exactly is Daikin, as was the question that I thought about at first. Well, I did some research, and I was able to learn a little bit more about Daikin Ballpark, or the Daikin company that the ballpark is being named after. And Daikin Comfort Technologies North America, Inc. is a subsidiary of Daikin Industries, which is based in Japan, and is a leading air conditioning company. I'm sorry, what? Air conditioning? Are you kidding me? Like, don't get me wrong, it does get hot in Houston during the summertime, and yes, there does need to be a need for air conditioning as well, but I mean, I don't know if I would be comfortable with a ballpark name like that, even though I do think that we do need air conditioning at some point. Like, okay, I think Sears, like if Sears was still around, they would be a better name for that matter, because they sold air conditioning corporations in a way. So this is something that was really shocking, and the deal, of course, with Daikin Park is going to be part of a 15-year exclusive naming rights partnership that will run from this season, 2025, up to 2039. So for 15 years, Daikin Park will be the home of the Houston Astros. And I'm just like, what? Like, Daikin, I don't want to be I don't want to be disrespectful here, because I really felt, Daikin is an interesting sponsor with air conditionings that they sell and everything. And of course, them being a Japanese company. But, I just don't know if it has the right ring to it. Like, I mean, this ballpark that was built in downtown Houston has gone through 4 name changes. First off, it was Enron Field. Like, the ballpark was built downtown in 2000, and it was dubbed Enron Field after the company. Well, Enron went through a financial scandal and was declared bankrupt after some time, and the Astros had to go with Astros Field for the time being until they found a sponsor. And, well, they found one in Minute Maid. And Minute Maid, at first, maybe not ideal, but has really become a beloved source for all Astros fans. They loved it so much that they dubbed it the Juice Box. You can see why. I mean, all the juices and the partnerships with Coca-Cola, the Minute Maids, and all that, it was really interesting. And I just don't know how, I just couldn't understand why they would go away from that as well. So I was talking about this with my family, and my brother Andrew, who kind of knows more about the business side of things. I'm not saying he works in sports, but he works in he does understand the business of baseball sometimes. He says, and I'm using a text message from him, he says, I guess my optimistic viewpoint is Daikin had to pay someone more than what Minute Maid was paying because they were locked in a deal from 2002. So now Daikin is paying starting in 2025. I would assume they are paying more. Maybe that is greater as revenue, and who knows, maybe the first installment of that contract is payment of $200 million. I could think of a place to allocate that money. Of course, he was referring to the third base position, which right now the Astros are trying to figure out, how their potential new third baseman, if not Alex Bregman does in fact leave the franchise, or he could resign. But they're trying to plan out their third base scenario either way. So we'll wait and see how that all pans out. But I just, to me, like I mean, I get it. It's all about corporate sponsorships these days. To me, it's really important that it has to identify with the fans. Like, I can't think of the Lakers' new arena as Crypto.com Arena. I can only think of it as, Staples Center. I can't think of, this ballpark, this new ballpark as Daikin Park. I can only think of it as Minute Maid Park for now. Then, of course, you had the Astrodome, and that's a story for another time, which they're dealing with their own potential ways of what to do with the ballpark that is right next to NRG Stadium down in Houston. Which, by the way, it took me a while to get acquainted with NRG Stadium, as I was used to Reliant Stadium, and I think Reliant Stadium has a little bit more flair to it as well. But Daikin Park, I'm having a hard time coming around to it at this point. Maybe it's just early on, and maybe at some point I will get to it eventually. But I'm going to be real honest, and this might be an unpopular opinion with some fans. As much as we don't like to look at Enron as a positive thing because of what happened and what led the corporation to bankruptcy, Enron Field was a much better name for that ballpark than Daikin Park at this stage. And I know it sounds crazy because we're still trying to figure things out with all that. But you know what else kind of bothers me about this is that they called Minute Maid Park the Juice Box. What are they going to call this? The Ice Box now? I mean, to me, it kind of bothers me, and it makes me kind of worried and upset. Like, what are they going to say when the Stros, get into a losing streak? Well, what's going on with the Stros? Why are they losing? Well, they just aren't hitting well and all of that. I mean, they'll break out of it eventually. Ah, I see. Well, why aren't they hitting? It's too cold in that building. Are you kidding me? Like, it's freezing cold up there. Yeah, so I'm just laughing at that, and it's just kind of funny when you think about it as well. And then something else that, had been on my mind, what are they going to do for the train? Because, in Houston, there's a train that sits on top of the left field bleachers or high above the left field area that every time an Astros player hits a home run, it moves along a railroad track, a single line railroad track as well. Now, quick story on that. The reason why there's a train there is because the ballpark was built right next to Union Station, which was a former railroad station. So that's why, there's, train there. And if you were sitting on the left field seats, you would actually be sitting on the former spot where trains came and went from their stations. So that's kind of an interesting fact in case you wanted to know what all the deal was about that train up there, why it looks as if we are a toy land, even though that was really the only thing at that stage. But yeah, going back to the whole deal with the train situation, like the train carried oranges as in honor of Minute Maid Park for the juices and everything. You start to wonder, okay, what are they going to carry with this new deal? Are they going to carry ice? Or are they going to carry air conditioning vents as well? Someone actually came up with a brilliant idea to have the train carry snowballs, or at least fake snowballs, and then have Bobby Dynamite, the train driver of the train, dress up like Santa Claus. And it would be Christmas all year round in Minute Maid Park. Yeah, no, man, I really don't know how I feel about this. Like, I'm sad that Minute Maid Park is no longer there. I kind of understand it as well, but I really wish we would have gotten a new sponsor. Like, one thing that I learned, or at least I read somewhere, and I don't know if this is true or not, but there was a report that HEB, which is a grocery store market, it was one of the companies the Astros had spoke to about the naming rights for their stadium. And, I'm sure there were some negotiations that happened there, but ultimately those negotiations fell through, and that's what led Houston to go with Daikin. And I'm just sitting there like, come on. HEB, the company, the organization that gave you all these commercials, that do the commercials for both the Astros and the Texans. I don't know if they do it for Rockets yet. I wouldn't be surprised if they started doing them for the Rockets. Like, that makes more sense. It's HEB. It's a Texas thing. And you want to be a Texas ballpark in a way. Like, the Texas Rangers, yeah, they got Globe Life, okay? Like, okay, so big deal. That's their business down in that farmhouse of Green Acres over there. But you have an opportunity to be a Texas ballpark. What's more Texan than HEB? Okay, maybe Buc-ee's, but that's a convenience store. But seriously, HEB is as close to a Texas market as it ever can be. I mean, Kroger, that's always traditional. Randall's is always traditional around the world. But come on, seriously, you have to go with HEB. I mean, that's the way I would have liked for it. But I guess HEB probably didn't want to pay the amount of money that the Astros were looking for to make this agreement. So, yeah, at this stage, that's what it's going to be called with. So, I really don't know how to feel about this. I mean, I know I'm sad, but maybe I'll come around to it. Although it is going to be kind of weird to have it called by a new name. Nothing against the sponsor or the organization, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I mean, we'll probably just need to give it some time, and hopefully things pan out the way they do, and just go from there. But I'll tell you what, Minute Maid Park has been the great site of some memorable moments. I've seen Chris Burke's walk-off home run in a playoff game to win a playoff series. I've seen the first World Series game ever. I've seen Craig Biggio's 3,000 career hit in that ballpark. I was there for, arguably one of the greatest World Series games of all time, Game 5, 2017 World Series, which we still would have won regardless of the circumstances, okay? I don't care. We were going to win it that year regardless. So, yeah, I've seen some great wins in that ballpark, but I've also seen some crushing losses. I mean, the last time I went there was, unfortunately, Game 7 of the 2019 World Series when we lost to Washington, and I haven't been back there since. And, I really want to go back to a ball game, but I just got to get over this, initial fear that, that anger that I still feel about the circumstances. I said that the next time I was going to go to that ballpark was when we were in a position to win the World Series. And I came close to it in 2022, but it just didn't quite work out for me then. So I'm just really hoping that I get a chance to go back there, and hopefully it's in a situation where we win the World Series. And speaking of which, let me say this. I'm sick and tired of our fans saying, oh, there's this curse because we hadn't won a playoff game, at home in like a couple years. Well, first of all, we won one playoff game last year in 2023, okay? We just didn't win out. Things happen. It's baseball. Get over it. And yes, it's unfortunate that we lost in the wild card round, but I promise you, we will win a home playoff game. In fact, we will win enough home playoff games to get back to the World Series. Now, I don't know when that's going to be. It may be that this coming year may be the last chance that we have at a run, and then we would have to go into a rebuild mode. But I just would hate it if if this were the peak of Yordan Alvarez's career, or maybe Kyle Tucker, and we are not able to build on their success. I just would hate that personally. And, I mean, I would really think that if you have those guys in the line, you need to take advantage that brings in some guys that can help you win and be a strong, legitimate contender. That's the way I got to look at that stage. And I truly believe that this Astros team can win another championship and will win another championship in my lifetime. I don't know when that's going to be, and I hope it's nearer sooner than later. But, man, what a run. What a run it's been for the Astros dynasty. Yes, they are a dynasty. I don't care what you say. If you say you need to win 3, guess what? You're a casual, and I don't play casual ball, all right? But, yeah, they dominated. They were the best team consistently in the American League. 7 straight ALCSs, 4 World Series appearances, 2 championship runs. Take it or leave it. And you know what? As grateful as I am, I can't wait to win another one and have another exciting offseason for that stage. But yeah, it's been a great run, and hopefully people will look back on it and say, you know what, in spite of everything, they made a mistake, they made a bad choice, but they were able to fight back and overcome the resiliency. They may be hated, but I'm sure eventually at the end of the day they are respected, and maybe one day they could be forgiven. But that's going to be a while at that stage. So hopefully for the future three-time World Series championships, this move will be able to benefit the team, and we'll wait and see what happens in the offseason. I know there's going to be a lot of talk about Alex Bregman and whether he stays with the team or not. Personally, I don't think he will, just because the contract, he's probably going to want a bigger contract, but we'll just wait and see. And folks, we are going to step aside. When we come back, I will have my Week 12 NFL predictions. Just making sure I correct myself there after an earlier flub on here, but Week 12 NFL predictions with yours truly. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Time now for my early Week 12 predictions, the prediction show where I may have my predictions, but if things change throughout the week, I'm sorry, I can't change my picks. I have to stick with what I picked at the start of the week. Usually do this early often because, of course, the first game is on Thursday night, and that is, of course, a game between the Steelers and the Browns. Before I get into that prediction, just to give you a heads up, 6 teams not playing this upcoming week: the Bengals, the Bills, the Falcons, the Jaguars, the Jets, and the Saints. So, we're going to be without those 6 teams for this week, but let's see how I manage in this Week 12. By the way, of course, I also went 8-6 this past week. That, of course, includes the game, which is a loss automatically because of the tie that I predicted between the Texans and the Cowboys. I'm never going to do that again, potentially. So, we'll see what happens there. So, I am 110-56 overall as far as my record is concerned. But here we go with my Week 12 predictions. Starting off with the Steelers and the Browns. Of course, the Pittsburgh Steelers. They are the talk of the AFC North with Russell Wilson. And I got to tell you what, I have been really impressed with this Pittsburgh team. I definitely think they are a franchise that could be a legitimate, I don't want to say they're AFC title contenders yet because I still think they got a lot to prove, but they're definitely off to a great start after a great win over the Baltimore Ravens, and I think that's going to carry them over to this game against Cleveland. The Browns are coming off a tough loss to the New Orleans Saints, and I don't know if the Browns will be able to respond to that. So I think it's going to be a good one. Pittsburgh should get the win there. Then we got the Texans and the Titans. Texans coming off a big win against the Dallas Cowboys, but they got the Tennessee Titans, and with those kind of games, you just never really know. It would be easy for me to say that this would be a blowout win, but again, even though the Texans got that offensive second half touchdown, finally, it's going to be real tough. The Tennessee Titans are a very tough team, despite of their record, but I think ultimately it's going to be a great game, and I think Houston should be able to get themselves another victory here. So, don't let me down, Texans. I'm going to pick them for this occasion, so we'll see what happens on this Sunday. Then we got the Minnesota Vikings, Chicago Bears. I mean, Bears continuing to have their woes. They barely lost to the Green Bay Packers. But again, the Minnesota Vikings are a team that should be, a strong NFC contender, and I think that's going to fare well for them. Going to be a tight one, but I think Minnesota should have this game ready to go. Washington and Dallas, ladies and gentlemen, I never thought in a million years I would say this after a while, but the Washington Commanders are going to beat the Cowboys. That's my prediction. I'm not guaranteeing anything, okay? I think Washington is, the story of the NFC East, and they're looking to maintain that poise as they take on a Cowboys team that, apparently the Cowboys season has fallen down just like the pieces on top of Jerry World. I mean, can you believe that? Jerry Jones, you spent all this time, you spent all this money trying to build a team and improve your brand, and yet you can't even fix your own stadium. Nice job, Jerry Jones. Well done. Well played. Washington gets the win over Dallas on this occasion. All right, the Patriots and the Dolphins. Miami having some struggles, of course, but, they're 7.5-point favorites against the Patriots, and that should be a telltale sign for Miami as they look to bounce back against New England. Yeah, and I think Miami will be able to get a bounce back win to take down the New England Patriots and try to get themselves a little bit further distance away. I mean, it's a game between two teams that are not in contention for the AFC at the moment, but we'll see what happens. I think Miami should have this one over the New England Patriots. Kansas City and Carolina. The Chiefs finally lost to the Buffalo Bills, of course. That was a really interesting game. But, I think Kansas City will be able to figure things out and bounce back from this game. Meanwhile, the Carolina Panthers are, they've had their moments. And Bryce Young, it looked like he was, expected to be playing really well to this stage. But, I mean, at this point, they're still at the bottom of the NFC South. And I just don't know if Carolina will be able to match Kansas City, even though the Panthers are hosting this game. I think the last time the two teams played, it was a really close game, but Kansas City ultimately came out on top. So I think Kansas City will bounce back after this one. They needed to lose that game, so that way they didn't feel the pressure of an undefeated season. So Kansas City will get the win over Carolina this week. Tampa Bay and the New York Giants. Yeah, I mean, the Buccaneers still threatening in the NFC South Division. Of course, they are actually they're only 2 games back of the Atlanta Falcons, who had a tough loss. So I think if the Buccaneers are wanting to get themselves back in contention, they'll need to step up and win this game. This is a game that I think Tampa Bay should win. And I think the Buccaneers will look to get themselves back on track and get themselves about a game back, or at least a half game back. So I look forward to seeing Tampa Bay try to get a win against the Giants, and I think that's what's going to happen there. Baker Mayfield continuing to lead his team, even though they're currently sitting at a dismal 4-6 at the moment. That's kind of surprising. I mean, the NFC South is really a tight division when you think about it. I mean, there's only 3 games separating the first place team and the fourth place team. So yeah, it's going to be real interesting how everything plays out in that division. I'm not sure if Atlanta can maintain that lead, but I think Tampa Bay will get this one. Detroit and Indianapolis. I mean, I think Detroit will figure this one out. It's going to be a tougher game. I mean, beating out the Jacksonville Jaguars the way they did, I mean, that was just too simple, too easy. I don't particularly think the Jaguars had any business being on the field with the Lions then, but ultimately, I think Detroit will get themselves another win and get themselves closer to clinching an NFC North title if they can manage to hang on to that. So Detroit gets the W. Denver and Las Vegas. Now, the Broncos are clearly are clearly battling themselves in the AFC West division. And, they got a win the last time, but still they're 6-5 at the moment, trailing the Chargers by a game and a half. Chargers, of course, are on a 4-game winning streak, but right now the Broncos are taking on the Raiders, who sit at a 2-8 record, 6-game losing streak. And I mean, ideally you would think that at some point the losing streak has to come to an end in a sense. So with that being said, I think the Raiders are going to surprise the Denver Broncos here this one. I think this will be my upset pick of the week to go with that. So I've got the Raiders beating the Denver Broncos. Moving now to the Seattle Seahawks and the Arizona Cardinals. Another battle for first place in the NFC West division. The Cardinals currently lead the Seahawks by 1 game, but then again, they lead the Rams and the 49ers by 1 game because there's a 3-way tie for second in the NFC West division. The Rams, Seahawks, and 49ers all sitting at 500 at 5-5. So clearly, somebody's going to maintain control of the NFC West, and if it's it's going to be a mess either way, unless, of course, the Cardinals get the win. But you know what? For the sake of chaos and confusion and panic mode for the fans of the NFC West, I want to see the Seahawks win. I want to see the Seahawks win so they could be in a tie for first place. In fact, speaking of which, let's throw in the next 2 games. I also want to see the San Francisco 49ers beat the Green Bay Packers just for the sake of chaos. So I got Seattle beating Arizona, and I got the 49ers beating the 49ers beating the Packers here. That's just the way, based on chaos. And you know what? How about, for the fun of it, let's just go ahead and say the Rams beat the Eagles. And ladies and gentlemen, by the end of next week, my prediction is all 4 teams will be 6-5. Oh boy, that is going to be one chaos if you're an NFC West fan. I mean, gee whiz. Talk about tight divisions here. I mean, the NFC South and the NFC West, I mean, that is just totally insane when you really think about it as well. So, basically, I had the Seahawks beating Arizona, the 49ers beating Green Bay, and the Rams beating the Eagles. And then finally, the Monday night matchup, the Baltimore Ravens against the Los Angeles Chargers. It's going to be a real tough game. I'm not sure what's going on with the Ravens at the moment because clearly, they're sliding a bit. And you look at the situation; they're 7-4, so they're still like a game and a half back of the Steelers. But you would not think that the Ravens after 11 games would be sitting with 4 losses. That's not acceptable. I mean, the Texans being 7-4 is more understandable considering the first place schedule, but the Ravens being 7-4 after 11 games, that is not good. That's just not a good look. So I think the Ravens will be able to get themselves back on track, and I think they'll stop the Chargers' winning streak. So the Ravens will go to 7-4, and then it'll be a tie for a playoff spot, playoff seeding at the moment between the Ravens and the Chargers. So once again, my winners for Week 12. Pittsburgh, Houston, Minnesota, Washington, Miami, Kansas City, Tampa Bay, Detroit, Las Vegas, Seattle, San Francisco, the Los Angeles Rams, and Baltimore. That is what I am picking for this occasion. Hopefully I can do better and not have a third consecutive week of going 8-6. And yeah, so we'll see what happens there as well. And that, my friends, is going to conclude this episode of Crocking, Locking, and Dropping with the K-Rock. And folks, thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you guys are enjoying the podcast, even if you may or may not make some comments about it. Hopefully you guys understand my viewpoints. You might say, well, this guy's confusing. I mean, he's a little bit of a deluded fool. Or, hey, I understand this guy. Maybe, just try to explain yourself a little bit more. Don't be afraid to comment me if you pick up on this podcast and everything. But anyways, folks, that is going to wrap it up here for this edition. Remember, you can listen to this podcast on my YouTube channel at KWCLND91 and also to Spotify and Podbean. That is going to do it. Hope you guys have yourselves a great week, and I'll see you guys next time on another episode of Crocking, Locking, and Dropping with the K-Rock.